I'm strapped to the plate, we're swinging for the stars. Every topic covered, it's a game with no bars. From the diamond lights to the field so clean, we hit every pitch, you know what I mean? You hear the crowd roar, it's more than a game. We're diving deep into every name. Welcome to the field, it's a podcast blast. The All Sports Podcast, we're built to last. From baseball legends to the latest score, tune in, turn up, you'll be craving more.
Yo, what's up, guys, and welcome to the first episode of the MLB segment of the All Sports Podcast. My name's Alejandro Rodriguez, and welcome to episode 1. Let's dive into it. Now, normally, baseball will be talked about throughout the entire year. However, this first episode will be talking about the 2024 postseason, talking about the NLDS and the ALDS. The DS means divisional series. As of right now, in the American League, the 4 teams that are playing each other are the Cleveland Guardians, who are taking on the Detroit Tigers, the New York Yankees, who are taking on the Kansas City Royals, and for the National League, it's the Los Angeles Dodgers playing the San Diego Padres, and the New York Mets playing the Philadelphia Phillies. First game we're going to talk about is going to be in the ALDS, with the Cleveland Guardians playing the Detroit Tigers. Going into this game, the two teams were tied at 1-1. However, the Detroit Tigers did take this pivotal Game 3 win, scoring 3-0. Now, watching this game was probably the underdog of the entire postseason so far, because a lot of people, for some reason, were writing off the Detroit Tigers. They did have a record of 86-76, while the Cleveland Guardians had a record of 92-69. So a lot of people were under the impression that in this matchup, the Cleveland Guardians were going to be solely dominant throughout. However, with the score being 1-1, and this Game 3 was pivotal because this game would take the lead in this best-of-5 series, the Detroit Tigers basically came out the gates running. They scored 3 runs. First run was in the first inning. The second run was in the third inning, and the third and final run was in the 6th inning. You know, throughout the year, Cleveland has done very well with putting points on the board. Their leader, Jose Ramirez, basically has been on a tear the past couple of months leading up to the postseason. But in 3 at-bats, didn't even get a hit, didn't even score any runs or no RBIs. The man who basically was taking over for the Cleveland Guardians hitting-wise was Steven Kwan, who is the left fielder for the Cleveland Guardians. He had 3 hits on the game, while Lance Thomas had 1 hit and Naylor had 1 hit as well. Naylor is the first baseman for the Guardians, and Thomas is the center fielder for the Guardians. Also, Rocchio, the shortstop for the Guardians, also had 1 hit as well, but like I had mentioned, they were unable to score any runs. Now, the Detroit Tigers had 3 runs, even though as of right now there were about 5 hits in total throughout the game, which was very interesting. You know, watching the Detroit Tigers basically pull out this Game 3 pivotal win over the higher-ranked Cleveland Guardians just shows how much baseball is so unpredictable. If you're a true aficionado of the sport, you do realize that baseball is just special, man. Anything can happen, and the Detroit Tigers are a prime example of that. Here they are taking Game 3 in the ALDS with 1 win away from going to the ALCS, which is the championship series, which is 1 series before going to the World Series. And they are literally going into tomorrow's game, Game 4, with the opportunity to put the Cleveland Guardians away early. Now, Cleveland fans, how are you feeling? You're down 2-1 in this series. On paper, you guys do have the better team. However, your pitching rotation, the bullpen haven't really been coming up to par. And, how are we feeling with how everything has been going so far, especially with the fact that you guys have had a great season this year? Let us know on X at MLB on X _. Again, that's MLB on X _. And Detroit Tiger fans, how are we feeling? You won this game in very nice fashion. You now lead the series 2-1, and you have one more game to put, the Cleveland Guardians away. How are we feeling, with our team basically, getting down and dirty to get this win? You beat out a lot of great pitching in the past 3 games. And, I've been watching you guys throughout the year, and you guys have always been, even though on paper you guys are labeled as an underdog, you guys have done really well with, making the games very difficult to be put away. So definitely let me know how you feel about that. So I'm going to move over to the National League, and this series plays really close to my heart because this is the New York Mets going up against the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, this game was Game 4. The Mets were leading 2-1 in this series, while the Phillies, who had, I believe, the second best or first best record in the MLB at 95 to 67 losses, while the Mets had 89 wins to 73 losses. This game was incredibly pivotal for the New York Mets to win, which they did 4-1. I am a New York Mets fan. I've been watching them for as long as I could possibly remember. And their season is almost like a Cinderella story. At one point in the season, they were 11 games below 500. A lot of people had written them off, like basically saying that the Mets were not going to do well this year. This is a contract year for one of the Mets star players, my apologies, Pete Alonso, who's our starting first baseman. And the Mets just clawed their way into basically getting into this postseason by getting into the wild card game by beating a longtime rival in the Atlanta Braves. Their last 2 games were postponed due to weather, and those playoff spots basically came down to those 2 games, and the Mets won the first game of that series, which locked them into the postseason, and the Atlanta Braves did win the next game, which locked them into the postseason. While the Braves did play the San Diego Padres, they did lose to the Padres, and the Mets, who ended up playing a very talented Milwaukee Brewers team, ended up clawing their way again into beating the Milwaukee Brewers to face another longtime rival in the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, the first game of this series, the Mets did win, basically delivering the knockout punch, even though it was very early to say it was a knockout. The Philadelphia Phillies did come back to win in Game 2, which by that point, every single team that was playing in the divisional series were tied at 1-1. The Mets did go on to win in Game 3, which was yesterday on October 8th, in very, very dramatic fashion, putting them ahead in the series 2-1. And today, on the 9th, the Mets came out with this 4-1 victory over the Phillies to send them packing back home to take the series 3-1. And this game was, man. The Mets were called at one point the Amazing Mets back in the day in the 80s and in the 60s. And sometimes they were also called the Miracle Mets. And this time around, this year, they were nothing short of a miracle. The last time the Mets were in true postseason form, and the last time they were even in the World Series was in 2015 when they lost to the Kansas City Royals, who are now currently playing the New York Yankees. Losing that series in the World Series was definitely a heartbreaking feeling to experience, but the fact that 9 years later, we are now one extra step closer to hopefully potentially getting back to the World Series. It was just a great thing to see. Our starting shortstop, Francisco Lindor, executed by far one of the best home runs I've ever seen in my life. Pete Alonso, even though he's another one of our star players, he actually put the team on his back. I believe it was against the Milwaukee Brewers, and again in the third game against the Phillies, where he just clobbered 2 home runs out of the park that basically, put the Mets ahead. But Francisco Lindor, this was his game. He had been and has been a very consistent hitter throughout all those 3 series. He was the catalyst for getting us into the postseason against the Braves. He was the catalyst alongside Pete Alonso to get us past the Brewers, and he was the catalyst for sure to get us past the Philadelphia Phillies. And this man today hit a grand slam that I would say was heard around the world. And all of that grand slam happened in the 6th inning. They were down 1. Philadelphia had scored in the 4th inning, but Francisco Lindor legitimately put the team on his back and did his thing. Ranger Suarez did pitch for 4.1 innings. He didn't give up any errors. He did have 8 strikeouts on the day. His counterpart, the starting pitcher for the Mets today, was Jose Quintana, who pitched for 5 innings. He did allow 1 run, which was the run in the 4th inning, and he had 6 strikeouts on the day. Another thing I wanted to touch upon was in yesterday's game on the 8th, in Game 3, Sean Manaea took the mound. Sean Manaea legitimately pitched 8 innings and was absolutely flawless. He was just fantastic. He unfortunately received the news that his aunt had passed away earlier that day, and he was later interviewed, and he mentioned that game yesterday was for her. So, our condolences do go out to the Manaea family, and I do hope that his aunt, was able to leave this earth in peace. But getting back to this game, Edwin Diaz, who is our star closer, came in and pitched 1 inning, struck out 2 batters, and he struck out Kyle Schwarber to end the entire series at 101 mile an hour fastball, which, even though this season he has been on a rocky road, delivered when he needed to. And that was by far the greatest thing I have ever seen. I'm going to jump back into the American League for my Yankee fans. You guys did beat the Kansas City Royals today, 3-2. The starting pitcher for the Yankee was Clark Schmidt, who pitched 4.2 innings. Unfortunately, he did have 2 errors, which was the 2 at-bats that the Kansas City Royals did come in. However, he did have 4 strikeouts on the day. The starting pitcher for the Kansas City Royals was Seth Lugo, who pitched 5 innings. He, too, also had 2 errors, but he did strike out 2 batters as well. The New York Yankees did open the tie break in the 4th inning when they scored their first run. And in the 5th inning, they also scored 1 run, making it 2-0. But the Kansas City Royals did score twice in the 5th inning as well. With the Yankees topping off this game in the 8th inning with 1 run scored. Basically, on the day, Kansas City had 6 hits while the Yankees had 4 hits. And this game was also very interesting to watch because Aaron Judge has been phenomenal this entire year. Last year, he was capping off probably statistically one of his best seasons as of his current date in his contract. And with the addition of Juan Soto this year, those two have been on a rampage of home runs that basically got this team into where they are right now. Giancarlo Stanton did have 1 home run in the game, which basically blasted this game, not wide open, but gave the Yankees the opportunity to win this game in the eighth. And he has been, even though he has have a history of injuries, whenever he's healthy, that man is just a cannon for an arm. When he goes to bat, it's just insane. Now for the Kansas City side, they did have a very interesting road to the ALDS. Salvador Perez, who is the Kansas City Royals' starting catcher and basically one of their big leaders, was basically the catalyst for the past 3 games, even though the Kansas City Royals have only won. They split the series 1-1 before today. And also Gurriel, who is the starting first baseman, also had 1 hit, along with superstar Bobby Witt Jr., who was their star shortstop, basically, trying to round off the top of that order. Now, this game was also very interesting to watch because Kansas City this year has been very, nitty-gritty when they play in these very close games. They finished the season with 86 wins and 76 losses, while the Yankees finished with 94 wins and 68 losses. So to be able to take the New York Yankees, who are so top-heavy, going into this ALDS and splitting the series, at least before today, only just shows how much they're not willing to back down from a fight, especially with a star-studded team like the New York Yankees. So Kansas City fans, how are we feeling? I understand you lost today. It is a pivotal game to win. But how are we going to get back into that win column? Bobby Witt has been incredible for you guys. Salvador Perez has also been incredible for you guys. The pitching is going to be incredibly important. You do have a game tomorrow. How are we feeling? I know Michael Lorenzen has pitched a couple of times in your series. Do you go back to him to kind of be your long reliever? Or do you kind of fall back on him to basically finish out the game for you? Definitely let me know in the X down below and also in the comments down below. MLB on X _. Again, that's MLB on X _. And Yankee fans, how are we feeling? You won this pivotal game 3. You guys have been riding strong with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, as well as the recent additions to Soto and to Jazz Chisholm Jr. that you got from the Marlins. How do you feel about Gleyber Torres starting your whole, lineup off? He's been doing incredibly well at that opening position in the lineup. And how are we feeling? You guys are 1 win away from getting back to the ALCS. So definitely let me know down below. And last but not least, we're going to jump right back to the National League with the Los Angeles Dodgers playing the San Diego Padres. Now, this series has been by far the closest in regards of on paper and actual gameplay, because this series is now tied 2-2, which means they are going to a pivotal Game 5. Dylan Cease started off this game. However, there was a little bit of concern with how he would perform, especially with the fact that he only had 3 days rest since his last start, which I believe was the first game of the series. And, he did struggle. He pitched for 1.2 innings. He had 1 strikeout, but he had 3 errors. While on the other side, Ryan Brazier, for the Dodgers, did also throw for 1.1 innings, and he also had 1 strikeout on the game. The Dodgers by themselves has also been the talk of the year, because Shohei Ohtani, in my opinion, will go down as quite possibly the greatest baseball player of all time. And I know that's incredibly early to say, but if you have been watching his entire career, he started his career on the Los Angeles Angels. And for the entire time up until this year, I believe Shohei Ohtani may be in year 8, I believe. I could be wrong. But the fact that this is his first year in the playoffs with the Dodgers after he signed a record-breaking 10-year, $700 million contract and then proceeded to defer $680 million of it so that his team could go out and buy, and it sounds terrible to say buy, but, you know, with this type of money, you're definitely buying something. But having this type, you know, giving his team the amount of money to go out and sign another star pitcher to basically replace him who had a recent UCL injury last year in Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Within one day, they basically spent $1.2 billion. And it's all riding on the fact that Shohei Ohtani deferred $680 million of his contract. And then on top of that, Shohei then went out this year and became the first MLB player to have 50 and 50, which means 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases. He was only maybe 5 or 6 players to get 40 and 40. And before the year, maybe about a month after he got 40 and 40, he got 50 and 50. He is now the only player to have ever successfully gotten a 50 and 50 season. If he doesn't win the MVP, I know there's from a lot of my own friends and even myself, I would be incredibly pissed, even though I do believe that Francisco Lindor, the shortstop for the Mets, deserves to be the MVP this year. It's definitely between those two because the storylines for these two players are just, you just can't make it up. It's almost like a fantasy. But the Dodgers on paper is very top heavy. They signed Shohei Ohtani. They have a superstar utility guy in Mookie Betts who has started at right field and then he started at shortstop when they needed him to, started at second base when they needed him to, and this man just does it all. And then on top of that, in that order, you also have Freddie Freeman, who is the star first baseman who came from the Atlanta Braves after winning a World Series with them to sign also with the Dodgers. So that's just on paper how good they are. Now, if you look at the San Diego Padres on paper, they're fantastic as well. They recently added their starting first baseman, Luis Arias, who also played for the Marlins. And from what I've last looked into his history since being in the league, he has maybe only struck out just a handful of times in his career. And that's saying a lot because baseball is such a hard sport because you're trying to hit a ball that's coming at you between 75 and 102 miles an hour. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's the most hardest sport, but it's a very difficult sport nevertheless. And the fact that this man has only struck out a couple of times in his career says a lot. They also have their star right fielder, Fernando Tatis Jr., and their star third baseman, Manny Machado, who have just been fantastic this year, even though Tatis Jr. Did have an injury and he missed the majority of the year. The fact that he came back and he looked as though he didn't even get injured in the first place was just incredible. Now, that's just on paper. Today's game did not show that at all. The Los Angeles Dodgers won 8-0 with 12 hits the entire game compared to the 7 hits that the San Diego Padres had. And this was a crucial game 4 because San Diego was up 2-1 going into this game. Now, San Diego is coming off a regular season record of 93 wins and 69 losses, while the Dodgers were coming off with a 98 wins and 64 losses. So this was literally a battle of titans here. Now, the fact that they couldn't even get a run in just showed the incredible depth that the Los Angeles Dodgers' bullpen has, and that's what makes them very scary. You know, they didn't even use A lot of their starting pitchers, I guess they're saving them for later on. Hopefully they do feel as though they will be going a lot further into the postseason. But the only true closer of the game, the only true pitcher was Evan Phillips, who basically finished out the game and who actually got the win for this game while Dylan Cease got the loss. It's just a tribute to how good both of these teams are, but how easily lopsided it could have been. Like the last game that put the Padres up to 2-1 was definitely about, I think from what I remember, it was 6-5 after the star left fielder for the Dodgers hit a grand slam to put them 5-6, and San Diego closed out. And this was yesterday, the 8th. So them playing today and basically getting smoked is just absolutely insane to watch. Now this is going into a Game 5. This is for all the marbles. This is going to put this team into the NLCS. And whoever wins this series will go on to play the New York Mets, which in 2 will also be a very crazy matchup because the Mets have already proven time and time again this postseason that they're not going to go down without a fight. So whoever wins this series is now going to have another opponent who just doesn't give up. So I'm very curious to see how this game goes. This game is going to be happening tomorrow on the 10th, and I'm just excited to watch this game. Now, the winner of the Tigers and Guardians will play the winner of the Yankees and Royals, but because the Yankees have taken a 2-1 lead and the Tigers have taken a 2-1 lead, both of those teams would have to win tomorrow's game in order to set the ALCS. So a lot of crazy things are going to be happening, and then by tomorrow, Dodgers fans, how are we feeling? You guys tied the series now 2-2. You basically blew the can open with today's game. How are we feeling about, Shohei Ohtani? How are we feeling about Mookie Betts? Freddie Freeman was scratched from the lineup today. I guess he was having a minor ankle concern. Do we hope that he's going to be able to play for tomorrow's game? Let me know down on the X. And San Diego Padres fans, you lost this game in terrible fashion, but you have one more opportunity to clinch a spot in the NLCS. How are we feeling about our team right now? By tomorrow, you'll know for sure who will be starting as your pitcher, and it's just going to be insane. Now, I just did a minor check. You guys are not playing your Game 5 tomorrow on the 10th. You're playing it on Friday, the 11th. So my apologies for that. If I had mentioned that you're playing on the 10th, you're actually playing on the 11th. So you do have 1 day's rest before playing your Game 5. So for both teams, you guys have the opportunity to, get as healthy as possible and finish out strong in the NLDS. So this has been an episode that I have been so excited to put together. I wanted to put this out earlier, actually since last week, but the games were so lopsided at some point that I was not going to be able to talk about every single team in last week's episode if I wanted to do it. So I do apologize for that. But I'm so excited that the DS games are almost finished or currently getting finished up. I'm super happy that my New York Mets already clinched a spot in the NLCS, and I can't wait to see who we end up playing. I also can't wait to see who ends up winning these next couple of games between the Yankees and Royals, Tigers and Guardians, and who's going to be our new opponent between the Dodgers and the Padres. Please check us out on social media at MLB on X _ with all of your comments and your thoughts about how, this postseason has been shaping up. Again, my name is Alejandro Rodriguez. I will definitely make sure that all of my real-time analysis and reactions are on the X, so definitely keep a lookout for that. And I cannot wait to see you guys very, very soon. What I will probably do, depending on how the games go in the American League, is as soon as all those games are finished and we have clear-cut definitive winners, I will make an episode as soon as possible. So be on the lookout between possibly Tuesday and Thursday of next week. And I cannot wait to talk to you all then. Have a great one.
We're stepping off the field, but this ain't the end. Join us next time, we'll still be your friend.